So right now, currently in the United States of America, millennials own 10% of wealth. 10%. And there's a ton of reasons for this. There's a lot of money controlled by baby boomers. Actually, literally half of money in the United States is controlled by baby boomers. Now, there's a lot of people who talk about a thing called the Great Wealth Transfer, and I'll probably have more than one thing to say about that. But it's really important to understand that a great wealth transfer is not a reliable thing that we should be like looking forward to capitalizing on or whatever, unless you're over a certain amount of wealth already. In reality, you should never be in a position where the only way that you're going to be able to have a hope for the future is if you happen to inherit something, because the majority of poorer people are not going to. 40% of all of the top money that baby boomers are going to leave as an inheritance, 40% of it, almost 50%, will not leave the hands of the top 10% of earners and holders of assets. The top 10% wealthiest people will gain 40% of all baby boomer wealth. So only 60% of it is going to get spread out amongst other people. And you've got to kind of not really expect a lot. For instance, my parents, are technically in the baby boomer age or whatever. My father and my mom, technically my stepmom, but I call her my mom. But they don't really have anything. They are not in the top 10% at all. They are very poor. They have Social Security income from working their whole lives, so they retired with that, and my father has a union pension. Ta-da! That is the entirety of everything. They don't even have like investment accounts. They don't even have like a Roth or IRA. Nothing. They do have a house that they own, and they have a little bit of money set aside to help them to live out the rest of their life that they had saved up, and that's about it. They have some physical objects that they own, and that's it. And they don't even have a ton of them because they sold the house that they had raised kids in, and the house that they own now is very small. So they don't even have a ton of possessions. So my parents don't really have a lot to leave. Besides the house, I mean, I don't even think they have life insurance. Besides the house, it's probably less than 30K. I mean, total for everything, cars included, that they own as far as assets. And they've got 6 children to split that up between. I'm not in any way, shape, or form under the delusion that I'm going to inherit some great, grand, life-changing amount of money after funeral costs, after all the fees and stuff that you gotta pay, after whatever it's gonna cost for one of my sisters to be the executor of the will and go to the courts and all that kind of stuff. We're probably, all of us, split up between all of us, maybe gonna get like $2,000 each. I told my parents, spend it all. You worked so hard your whole lives. I don't think you would be capable of leaving a giant inheritance anyway, so just live your best life. Go spend the last years of your life in as happy of a way as you possibly can. We don't need an inheritance. You raised us all to the point where we all are semi-functional adults and we can take care of ourselves. So kudos to you. When you go to your deathbed, in your oldest of age, when you die, all of your kids are going to survive. That's something. Maybe they couldn't give us all the money in the world, but at least we all are functional. So, I don't expect any kind of inheritance. My birth mother, fully estranged from, technically she has tons of money, but all of her children are fully estranged from her. My birth mother, unfortunately, was not the best person. Anyway, the point is, I'm not getting anything from that. So all of that tons of money, I'm assuming she'll just leave to her cult. I do not expect in any way, shape, or form, anything. So I know personally this whole great wealth transfer thing's not going to impact me personally in my actual life because I'm not getting any of it. Like, for real, I'm getting nothing. So I am one of those millennials. Yeah, I'm not getting anything. I know a ton of millennials who are in that boat. The thing is, the great wealth transfer is actually a bunch of wealth transferring from one generation into a bunch of giant investments. A ton of it is going to go to charities, a ton of it is going to go to investment accounts or businesses or corporations, and not a ton of it is going to transfer to the poorest and the people who could really like change their life with it. So the great wealth transfer is kind of a misleading term in certain ways because we have a tendency as human beings to think immediately when we hear something like, oh, cool, how does that affect me? Let me be really, really clear. It might not. It might not affect you. The great wealth transfer is not a transfer to everybody in general. It is a transfer to specific places. So yes, it's a ton of money that is changing hands over the next 20 years. It is expected, I don't even remember how many trillions it was that was going to change hands, but it's a lot. Baby boomers basically have entered, you know, the youngest of them being 60 and the oldest of them being about 80. So the silent generation is mostly passing away. That's sad. And the baby boomers are going to be following next. And the silent generation already left a bunch of inheritance to baby boomers. So that's part of where they got their money from. Also, things were a lot more like financially possible during the 70s and the 80s. And so when they were buying assets like a home or whatever, you know, maybe starting an investment account, there was a ton of growth. Like, the amount of growth since the mid 1980s to now is like 500 times for like housing. The average house, even if you didn't live in that fantastic of an area, still grew from the mid 1980s 500 times in value. So, you know, they have a ton of net worth on stuff that they were able to get just being like quote unquote semi-average for the time. There's a lot of that wealth that is holed up in predominantly white families and situations, and unfortunately a bunch of the money that's held by white people will continue to be held by white people. Not a lot of the top 10% are people of minority descent, and again, 40% of that money is going to stay in the top 10%. So 40% of that money is just going to stay with the same old rich people and unfortunately predominantly white people. A great wealth transfer as far as numbers go, but it's not a great wealth transfer as far as impacting the majority of us. 60% of this country lives and survives on below a livable wage. Yeah, the majority of us are not. That's not going to change. Hate to tell you. The top 1% and the top 10% of people in this country, of earners and people with assets, they own literally half of the money, period, out of all of us. The bottom, you know, rest of us, we only have half, and they all have the other half as far as finances go. The trillions of dollars that are out there, literally if you combine the top 1% with the top 10%, they have half of it. And the rest of us all have our little itty bitty bits. So if your parent is a baby boomer that is part of those little itty bitty bits, they're not going to have a lot of wealth to transfer. It's unfortunate. It is what it is. So just take it with a grain of salt when you hear like the news or you hear people on financial stuff talking about the great wealth transfer, because in reality, it might not impact you, if you're a poorer end of the spectrum person, that significantly. The things that they're talking about aren't actually going to involve your personal life.